Hello and welcome to the Michael Mamas Show. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwara Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. And, I have to talk about what I'm into. That's really what these podcasts are about. And sometimes it's Brahma Sutra. What's that, Scott?
Huh?
Oh, I thought you said something. Okay, this and that, but right now, well, it's two things really. But really, it's pu'er tea is a fascinating field. I can get into that. Maybe I will at some point. But today I want to talk more about really it's the ancient internal arts and how to cultivate them. And there's a million different ways, Dharma talks about archery, or it's a funny thing, in Dharma they talk about weapons. And so a lot of people, even people who really are well versed in the Veda, will talk about how Dharma is about weapons, which is a very superficial understanding of what Dharma really is. Dharma is about, it's an upaveda, it's a lesser Veda. In other words, it's a Veda that maps onto relativity. Though the pure Veda is actually a functioning within the mechanics, within the absolute, you could say it that way. And so things like Ayurveda, Jyotish, Dhanurveda, they're upaveds. And so what weaponry, you see, is really on a deeper level, in a more transcendental sense. It's modes of function. And so there are a finite number of weapons that are really mapped onto these fundamental modes of function. And so it's through the cultivation of those modes of function that on a surface level is becoming master of different weapons that cultivates the physiology. And so you'll see pictures of gods or goddesses with all these arms, and each arm is a different formidable weapon. And so if you look at that from one level, it's like, oh, that's a pretty savage religion, that's just not what it's about. It's about these deeper modes of function, and those different weapons are just superficial expressions of those fundamental mechanics within creation itself. And so mastery in the internal arts sense is the cultivation within the physiology of those various modes of function. And others. And so I kind of stumbled upon sumo deadlifting because originally I just wanted to get in good shape, and so I was some time ago, but one thing led to the next. And so I got back into fitness and exercising and that, and then got into deadlifting. One thing led to the next. Then I discovered sumo deadlifting, and I realized, man, there's something different about this. And what's different about it is that it's a methodology of bringing those values of function of Dhanurveda, of the internal arts, into the physiology. And so you see, from the relative perspective, we think of strength as muscles and forcing and effort. Real strength is not about that. Real strength is effortless. And in a physical sense, in a relativistic sense, it's like using the earth. Earth would map onto, I guess you'd say, Mother Earth, the absolute, like that, the transcendent. But it maps on in the relative as the physical earth, and using that leverage, if you will, using that power so that the earth then functions through you. So it's not like you're doing it with your muscles. It's like the earth is doing it through you. And to cultivate that, what has to happen then is, one, we have to get past our holding on to our preconceived notions of what strength is and how to achieve it and how to manifest it. And kind of getting out of the way in a sense, but there's a very physiological reality to it. Because you see, the kind of strength that we've been indoctrinated into believing in has everything to do with how the physiology is held, how even the fascia tightens up, certain muscles tighten up. Parts of and we all feel that, don't we? Different parts of our physiology tighten up to kind of hold. And then we function through life that way. Whereas with sumo deadlifting, it kind of relates very directly, really, to the horse stance. The movement is, the stance is similar, really, and identical, you could say. And why is that? Because first you connect with your feet, and then the strength comes up through the legs, right through the midline. And so it just, and every aspect of the body. And so it's really interesting because in the West, when they talk about deadlifting and sumo deadlifting, it's such a fascinating process to discover this, as a process. But they talk about, tensing up the abdomen, tensing up the muscles, get the whole body tense, and then lift the bar. That is not in internal arts. It's the opposite. So in internal arts, when you start exploring the internal art of sumo deadlifting, the whole thing is effortless. The body, you find that place where it's completely relaxed. But relaxed doesn't mean flaccid. It doesn't mean passive. It means, what does it mean? It means organized. And what's organized? The physiology is organized. And we could look at it from the perspective of the fascia is organized so that the connection of the elbow to the earth is there, superfluid, unobstructed. It all flows, and it all flows predominantly, you could say, through the lower abdomen, which is the hara, they call it. Different names for it. And when you do that, then it's like the effort isn't localized in one part of the body. It's the totality of the body. So it becomes like a geodesic dome, where it's a geometric structure, the dome, Buckminster Fuller. And so the strain isn't focused on the muscle that you're using. It's dispersed, it's spread out through the entire structure itself. And so it's no problem. And so there's no strain, there's no effort. The whole thing just functions as a unified whole. So a barbell curl is done with the totality of the body. Anything you do is done with the totality of the body, not through straining, not through tightening, but through organization, through integration. And that applies to anything we're doing in life. I don't care if you're knitting or going to the grocery store or whatever you're doing, that on that Dana Veda, on the relativistic level, which correlates to the absolute, maps onto, it's all about that, no matter what you're doing. That's what health is. It's integration of the physiology. And so the process, that's another thing I love about Dana Veda is if you don't do the lift properly, it shows up right away. Your back hurts, or you hurt your knee, or and also it has to do with the integration of the nervous system. This is so fascinating to me. The nervous system with the muscles through the fascia. Because when you push, you see the nervous system, it's amazing. The nervous system gets cultivated. And it sort of controls the whole thing. And it's like, it's fear, but it's not like an emotional fear. It's a protective sort of mechanism of the nervous system itself. So that if you want to lift more weight than you're used to, the nervous system says, no, stop. And then you just can't move the weight. It just won't go. But it's not because you don't have the muscular strength. It's because you don't have the organization. You don't have the physiological organization. And so through the practice of sumo deadlifting, and that's too, you can't, if you get to the point where the physiology says, no, that's enough, you stop right there. You're not trying to lift a bunch of weight. You're cultivating the nervous system integration. And that may be done at a much lower weight than you might be able to move if you just really pushed to the point where you can even hurt yourself, which is common. Isn't that like life? So the thing is that when you cultivate that in the physiology through whatever mechanism, I'm using sumo, it doesn't stop right there. It permeates all the different facets of human function. Because when you think about it, that stopping, that tensing, that holding, that's life. And during this sabbatical that I'm doing, the whole thing is becoming purified really at an exponential rate. And it's not always pleasant because these are different stresses and strains in the fascia, in the body, in the physicality that are getting purified out through this process. And it emerges in different ways, not just as tight muscle, but also there's a whole emotional component to it. When all this stuff wells up and flows out, it can emerge as anger, frustration, and it's like, in a way, it can feel like you're out of control, because in a sense you are, because you're not tightening and forcing and functioning in a rigid manner, but you're allowing your own nature to take over as the earth flows through the physiology. And it's intimidating, it's disconcerting, it's can even be embarrassing, But you get to the point where you realize, and this is part of the process, and I'm in this process now, you realize you don't have to hold yourself anymore. Nature does the holding, and it's not even a holding. And nature takes over. It's your own nature. It's the earth flowing through you. And it does a way better job than you do, and it's not about effort. It's about organization of the physiology to function the way it's designed to, really. So from the one perspective, we go through life feeling like I must hold. And the other feeling that starts to happen is I am held. They talk about, do less and accomplish more, do nothing and accomplish everything. And that's true in a very physiological sense. Because when this natural flow takes over, it feels like, we could say out of control, or we could say like you're not imposing your will or forcing things or efforting. And real mastery, I guess, from a internal arts perspective would be that you're not doing anything. Like they say, as it applies to sumo deadlifting, you're not lifting the bar lifts itself. And these things that sound so far out, they become very pragmatic concepts. And through the practice, you just get better and better at it. So, in one sense, it can be viewed as irresponsible, but in another sense, it's not about letting go of responsibility. It's about letting go of bracing. We go through life braced, and it's no way to live. But the process is not so squeaky clean, hunky-dory, easy and fun, It's a challenge. because bracing is what we've become identified with, how we brace, how we hold, how we function, how we get through life. And letting go of that is again, it's uncomfortable, it's disconcerting. And in my write-up at michaelmamas.net for this podcast, I talked about, my role really as a leadership in it's a leadership role. I mean, I founded Mount Soma, and I've been doing this for over 30 years. And there's a lot of stuff coming at you, it's a lot of responsibility. And so without even thinking about it, what just happens is the physiology starts to brace, it starts to tighten. The muscles even, and I think we can all relate to that. And so it's good that really for that reason alone, even though I certainly need the rest after 30 years, but it's good to take these few months, and I have a few more months to go. It's this process, and in one sense, you're letting go, and so it feels like there's a vulnerability there. You're opening to a vulnerability. What about this thing I've had to do to keep things running, and I'm kind of letting go of that? But it's a vulnerability that you're resting into, but it's not a collapse. It's a reorganization. And so that change can be intimidating and uncomfortable, and what's happening to me in a way. And then the whole purification process. Any of you that have been doing long meditation know how that purification process feels. It's not always smooth and peachy, So you're not really releasing responsibility. What you're really releasing is armor, and armoring. And when the armor starts to come off, you realize just how heavy it was, Is this all making sense to you, Scotty?
For sure.
Yeah. I'm going through this process right now. I'm really in it, and I'm loving it. But at the same time, it's very challenging and fascinating as can be. And I hope that you're viewing this thing not as, okay, I'm going to give you the little checklist and here's what it is in a neat and tidy way. What I'm really trying to do here is, I would say, giving you the opportunity to witness how that process unfolds. Because if you just learn about the room without witnessing the doorways and understanding the doorways, then it's all just too neat and tidy, and it's not really how it works. That's why they say that one of the best ways to learn about this process is to witness people that are going through it. Because after you're in the room, you don't think about the doorways anymore. You can't even remember them. I can't even remember some of the doorways I went through to get to the point that I'm at now. And I got a lot more doorways to go through. So when you listen to these podcasts, because I got a notion I'm going to be talking about these different learnings for a while, view it that way. You're witnessing some guy who's willing to share his process with you in the cultivation of, to whatever degree I end up being successful, we'll see. But the cultivation of internal arts. You go on YouTube, and it's kind of frustrating. There's some people that are pretty good, no question about it. But by and large, internal arts, they'll give a little disclaimer in the beginning, oh yeah, it's nature flowing through you, blah, blah. And then they go into, the 15 steps or whatever like that, and it's all about an overlay in the surface, and it's not about the internal arts. It's about a mimicry of movement, or a theory of microcosmic orbit or what have you. And that's all well and good to a point. I mean, don't get me wrong. And if you want to memorize these different moves in Tai Chi and stuff, it's up to you. But to me, the process is so subtle and so sublime. That would be tough to really have that work properly. Because, first you get the geometry right, you get the organization right. And in sumo deadlifting, we could liken that to when you have your knees bent, your posture's right, and you have your hands on the bar. Okay. And then you do the subtle shift that I've talked about, and at one point, it kind of locks in. And what that is, that locking in, is the body suddenly, everything's lined up, aligned just right, and so then all of a sudden it opens. And that's the clicking in I'm talking about. It's like the physiology opens and you feel that super fluid, unobstructed connection through your whole body to the earth. But that's great. I mean, that's the horse stance, really, without the bar. That's the horse stance. But then when you add a load, like the bar, the weight, it's almost like a test, an acid test, Because it's one thing to hold it when there's no weight being supported. Another thing, you start lifting weight, and it tests it even more. But then there's another stage. And the other stage is when you go through the movement so that every step, it's a continuum of different postures, if you will, positions where the physiology needs to remain open in that sense through the entire process, through the entire lift and back down. And with Tai Chi, the same thing. But when you're spending so much time memorizing movements and how they look at, one movement is enough, is where I'm at right now. Because all these different movements, how do you do it? It's just too much to remember. And then after you do it, after you get that lift right and put the bar back down and ascent, descent, all that's just right. Okay, now let's add some weight and see if you can do it. And so it's a cultivation, even further cultivation of the process. And that takes a long time. There are people who study the internal arts, and I understand that they spend their time, their main focus is horse stance. Can you just hold the horse stance? And I think that's very good. As long as it doesn't become a muscle thing, Can I hold it? My legs are shaking, but can I hold the muscle? So there are levels of sophistication is what I'm getting at with all these different cultivations of internal arts and what we're talking about here. And for me, I mean, certainly 3 months is not enough, but it's enough to get a good trajectory going. It's a good starting place. And it will change your life for the better, But it is a process. Anything else, Scotty?
No, it's good. There's so many different ways to roam.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to push that sumo is the way, but it does have advantages, and it is, the way. And it doesn't matter what the way is, because the principles are the same. So when I talk about my experiences with sumo, that maps onto whatever
to whatever
whatever approach,
yeah,
whatever approach you do. Yeah.
or whatever thing you're working on, right? Too.
Yeah. Yeah. Power and ease are not opposites. This is a good one. Stability, born of rigidity, feels strong. Stability born of shared load is strong. Shared load, we're talking about the geodesic dome where the whole physiology is integrated. So it's not just a strong bicep, it's sharing the load through the whole physiology, and then it doesn't feel like there's any load. It's all coming through the earth, through the whole physiology. Stability born of rigidity feels strong. Oh man, that muscle. But stability born of shared load, that is strong. And that's true if you're in a conversation that's challenging. If you're sitting there trying to drive your point at the exclusion of your whole physiology, it feels strong, it feels poignant, it feels intense, but it's not real strength, and that's not really the right way to communicate. You know, you watch these politicians on the news and they're all mad and they're yelling. It doesn't persuade me. The effect it has on me is they need to mature. It just doesn't work. And so we're talking about maturation of the physiology, really. All right, I hope I'm trying to convey this. I don't know that I'm doing a great job. I'm doing my best. But you're witnessing the process, and the process isn't neat and tidy, it's messy. It's all happening at once. And I hope you appreciate that. I hope I can convey that. I hope I'm not failing you in that regard. But I think it's such a valuable, at least for me, it was such a valuable learning that I really want to share it and see where it leads. All right, everybody, thanks for listening, and thanks for bearing with me here. And we'll talk again more next week.